From SCNR.com. Pro-Biden super PAC to spend $1 million on TikTok influencers. The PAC may have already violated some of TikTok's policies. You know, we got enough problems as it is with TikTok and their algorithm and all that. And now, quote, the effort is part of a larger Democratic strategy to lure young voters into battleground states who polls show are increasingly critical of Biden, whether over his age or issues like his stance towards Israel. Biden's re-election campaign itself is amping up its work with social media influencers in 2024, though those partnerships are currently unpaid. Daniel Wessel, a Biden campaign spokesperson, told Politico, the White House team separately is also flexing its creator game, throwing its first ever influencer Christmas party last December. So there's this guy who made a video where his TikTok, he's got like 400,000 followers, and he just yells. So he's always complaining about something and he yells, and he's complaining about the economy. He recently made a video where he said he was contacted by someone claiming to be in the Democratic Party who offered him $50,000 for a pro-Biden post.
Wow.
And
One post.
Wow. And he said, as somebody who sells shout outs and reads, like $50,000 is a lot of money for a single post. Right? So the powers that be are ready to drop, I would assume, more than $1 million on getting people to claim Biden's the right choice. I remember back in 2016, there were a lot of high profile personalities on YouTube that for some reason were just in favor of Joe Biden. And we were like, why? But here we go. I'm wondering what the Republicans have to counter this.
I was wondering that too. That was my first question what is the RNC spending on social media influencers? And if you look back at Biden's history in office and his campaign, he's been spending money on influencers this whole time. I remember distinctly Jen Psaki had a whole round table of influencers come into the White House to tell them all to promote the Ukraine war. I forget who, there was reporting on that from the Washington Post. I think it was actually Taylor Lorenz covered that. We also had, remember the guy in the white suit with no shirt, which I don't understand, a suit with no shirt. Like, that dry cleaning bill has got to really be insane. But he was out there with his fingernails and his cell phone, boosting the White House. You had remember that guy?
Yeah.
He was the worst guy. He was
doing like a day in the life of the intern at the White House.
He was awful. And then over the summer, you had was it not this past summer, but the previous summer, you had Biden brought in a whole bunch of social media influencers to tell him why it's important to have child sex changes and all kinds of stuff like that. You had Dylan Mulvaney in the White House doing that.
Is that the one where the dude was took his shirt off and was like on the White House lawn? Is that the one?
No, that was June Pride this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it
wasn't a dude.
No, it was.
It was a dude.
I thought you were talking about
there was males and females.
There were males and females. The females had no breasts and the men had large ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So here's a question for you. If a pro-Trump super PAC came to us and said, we want to give you $100,000 to promote us and do a read, should we accept that?
I don't think we should, because number one, we're all actually different entities, and so it would be confusing to see our individuals' opinions away from the brand. And I also think that ultimately, at least for me...
That has nothing to do with, like, should the show accept a sponsorship that's a political sponsorship supporting a candidate if they were to pay us a lot of money? Should I do it like, hey, this episode's brought to you by TrumpisTheBest.com?
You'd lose credibility.
Yeah, I think it makes you look biased. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think
even if there's full disclosure.
I mean, it's Tim's show ultimately, so if that's what you wanted to do, that's fair. But if we were operating like the editorial board of a newsroom, then I wouldn't want to do it. I also don't like when editorial boards... I know, that's what I'm saying. I also don't like when editorial boards endorse candidates. I think that there is a level of...
Is SCNR going to endorse?
I don't know.
I don't
mean,
think
that's up
so.
to Chris and
You don't
Cassandra.
think so? I don't think Post-Millennial is
I don't
going
know
to
why
do
we
it.
would.
Yeah, it's up to
either.
Chris and Cassandra.
I don't know why we would. It's
Yeah.
up to Chris and Cassandra because they're the editors.
It's weird that newsrooms endorse candidates. I
think it's super
that.
weird.
I don't like it either.
So my question then is for you, Libby.
Yeah.
Personally or organizationally, would you accept $50,000 to $100,000 in support of from a PAC to support a candidate?
To support a candidate?
Well, like
no,
they say,
but I would accept the ad dollars.
We want a post that makes insert candidate looks good.
Like sponsored content?
Well, however a PAC would pay for an influencer to promote.
Like you make a post saying, hey, this is me, this person's awesome.
Advertorial on the Post Millennial or Human Events or something?
I don't think so. I would take ad dollars. If you wanted to buy ads like for your political campaign, I would probably take ad dollars for that. I think that would be fine. I don't know that I would be in favor of doing an advertorial. I'm not crazy about
It's even more shady when they.
Posts.
It's even more shady when it's the TikTok posts. It's
I like
tricking people
products.
to look like it's organic,
product.
and it's not organic, and they're paid. I think that's a little bit more shady.
Here's the bigger risk. I'll tell you the one reason why I would not accept it, because the rules around political advertising are intense, and that's a nightmare to navigate.
Well, and then you'd have to take anybody's political advertising.
Not necessarily.
Isn't that what the TV stations had to do?
It depends on the structure of how your ads are done. If you don't have the inventory, you can't sell the inventory.
We're so far past TV.
If I own but a single roll of toilet paper and a Democrat wants to buy it and a Republican wants to buy it, only one of them is getting it. But the bigger issue is
if I had a single roll of toilet paper, I wouldn't sell it.
The issue is not the issue of, is it appropriate? I think you end up running into the problem of Democrats have no issue whatsoever taking money from powerful political organizations to make fake content.
Yep.
And then people on the right are like, well, I think that's wrong. We shouldn't do it. And so I'm just like, yeah, there's an issue of we have limits on this show of what we're willing to accept in terms of sponsorship. We've had people try to buy their way onto the show. We never allow people to come on the show in exchange for money. That is not allowed. And but I recognize the challenge of, so long as people on the right who are opposing the establishment reject this, standing on their moral high ground, the Democrats will keep having the advantage because they have no scruples.
True. It's one of the things that actually works against us as conservatives is, we wonder, how do they always get these people out into these big frenzy, out into these big mobs or whatever? It's because Democrats are a group mentality. It's easier to herd them into one certain thing. Whereas conservatives, we're just like, I just want to be left alone. Just want to live my life, want to raise my family, start a business. And in this aspect, it's kind of used against us.
Yeah, I think that's similar. I think the acceptance for individual difference, it's much higher among conservative communities than it is on the left, which is sort of the inverse of what they market, right? They say we're tolerant, we're accepting, but we're actually not. We expect you to fall in line, and we expect you to be okay with the things that we're okay with. And I think that's sort of the big lie that they have sold a lot of generations and a lot of really misguided people who feel anxiety within themselves. They don't feel comfortable with who they are. And so they think, I'll just run to whoever's accepting. But I have to earn that acceptance by complying completely and totally with their worldview. And that's very different, especially from, every variation of a conservative community I've personally experienced.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's weird. I mean, I think it is the big... Democrats have, I don't want to say Democrats, left-leaning causes, whether it's Democrat or just different organizations, have always done a really good job of getting out ahead of messages and spinning them. And I think this is something that Republicans struggle with. In this case, like talking about endorsements or whatever else, like I think ultimately I have to live with myself, and I would rather try to find another way to tackle the advantage than to just do what they're doing, because I have to live with myself at the end of the day.
Well, and back to your point of the left, like they'll accept you until you step out of line. And the perfect example of that is the people who were transitioning. They sung their praises and were like, oh, and then when someone wanted to detransition because they're like, wait a second, I made a mistake, they like the left attacked these people. I mean, it's
weird. If they were tolerant, wouldn't they just be like, yeah, everyone has a different experience,
exactly,
people's gender journey or whatever.
One of the most frustrating things for me is Daily Wire posted a video on X. It's Ben Shapiro debating destiny, and Ben defines woke, and Ben is wrong in the majority of his definition.
What did he say?
He defines woke as this ideology rooted in postmodernism. He gives a long definition, but he basically says it's about power structures. It's about, those who in power tend to be bad. And I'm paraphrasing rather poorly, but he basically gives this ideological woke is, postmodernism with a racial component and then gender ideology. It's totally wrong. Wokeness means adherence to the social orthodoxy of dominant institutions. That's it. That explains why. So the issue is, for someone like Ben, I can understand why he would say it this way. He's a political junkie. So he's looking at all the highest level things, and wokeness is identifiable in its root form. The average person who says woke does not mean any of that because they don't understand what that is. And so they'll refer to a woke person because they're flying the Ukraine flag or something in their profile picture. Why is it that there's an overlap between those who support critical race theory, gender ideology, and supporting war in Ukraine? Perhaps the argument can be made that because Russia is the power and Ukraine is weaker, therefore Russia is bad. Well, that doesn't really make sense because the U.S. is funding Ukraine to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. In fact, supporting Ukraine is supporting Western imperialism and hegemony. So why would they support going to war against Russia for Russia's border dispute? We in the West are the dominant power, because all that really matters is woke is a reference to when someone adheres to the social orthodoxy of the dominant institutions. And it's amorphous. Sometimes it's woke, sometimes it's, see, woke in the esoteric sense. Sometimes it's postmodernist, critical race theory, gender ideology. Sometimes it's absolutely not. And everyone falls in line. The best way to understand this is how the left uses a Mott and Bailey tactic. If the left was truly, if woke truly was postmodernism, there would be no Mott and Bailey. They'd quite literally say, here's our argument, have a nice day. But they don't. They change their argument to a civil libertarian argument when threatened, showing there is no actual ideology here. It is simply just, we are a group that is in line with each other. We look for others who are wearing the same color clothing. And so long as we do that, and we're up to date on the latest fashion, we are aligned. That's what woke is. I describe it as a bunch of birds flying in the sky, flying in random directions. They occupy a very specific space. You can see them. Oh, they're over the lake. Yes, they have this weird leftist postmodernist thing to them, but they're really flying around and they can move at a moment's notice. So I tweeted a picture of something called an ant mill. You guys have heard of this?
No.
Ants, when they walk, they leave pheromone trails to signal to other ants where they went, what they're doing. They come back with food and they can follow that line. So you notice this in your kitchen, the line of ants. An ant mill is when the ants get turned around and form a circle. What happens is they follow pheromones in a circle forever until they starve to death.
What? It's called a March of Death as well.
March of Death, a death
That
circle
really
in ant mill.
happens?
Yes.
So they'll just walk in a circle until they. Wow.
Because they can't see the big picture.
Yeah.
They're a tiny ant, and to them, they're just following the path. And the path is one big circle, and they're all following each other, and more keep funneling in until they eventually just starve to death or dehydration and die. That's wokeness. You join the circle, they're all following each other. You say, what is the ideology they hold? Whatever the ideology of the person in front of them holds. It could be anything.
Well, it's a shifting sand.
That's why Wimixin is offensive today, but not offensive tomorrow. It's why women with a Y is offensive today, not tomorrow. Because postmodernism is just a current component of the cult ant mill ideology. And it can become imperialist Western hegemony at a moment's notice. So one day they're saying power structures are bad. The next day, they're like, we support NATO expansionist on the Russian border. What? Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.